Craig Wood is looking to become the world's first triple amputee to sail solo, non-stop and unsupported across the Pacific Ocean. A former soldier, he lost both his legs and his left hand in a bomb blast in Afghanistan in 2009. His story is one of recovery, inspiration and challenge.
Like someone without legs, you might say, can't sail across an ocean, or it's not the first thing you'd think of. But I'm trying to change that perception on what is possible.
You are obviously a keen sailor, but there's being a keen sailor and there's a challenge like this one.
Up to 80 days alone. That's the biggest sort of unknown for me. I remember seeing a white flash hitting the ground, like heavily hitting the ground, and then the guy in front of me running towards me screaming my name. My perfect sailing is, it's dark, there's a full moon, so it's not really dark. There's algae bloom off the back of the boat, and you just hear the from the dolphins next to you, and you're like, oh my God.
Craig, the reason why we're doing this pod, I guess, is, well, one, you agreed to it, and two, I was chatting to my friend Sarah J. Mee, who's a Sky News broadcaster, and I think you did an interview with her a while back as well, and she said to me, you've got to speak to this remarkable individual who is going to take it upon himself as a triple amputee to sail the Pacific non-stop, solo, unsupported next year. I couldn't believe that story. I came home and spoke to my husband, who you probably know is a professional sailor, seeing as you love sailing, you're probably aware of that. And we just couldn't get over what you're doing here and the challenge that you're taking on. And obviously it's got a great message attached to it for anybody about, just endeavor and inspiration. But just tell me in your words why you're doing what you're doing and what that looks like.
Yeah, it initially started off as a record-breaking attempt, so that was the main drive, and then it quickly got bigger than that, basically within a couple of days. So I wanted to break a world record, and an easy record for me to break is to do with sailing, due to there being no other triple amputee sailors, especially doing what I'm doing across oceans and stuff. So it started off as that, and then I was like, well, I could probably raise money. Like I could make a thing out of it. And so then we did. Like, we're going to raise money for 2 charities. Fantastic. And then now it's meeting people like yourself who are like, wow, this is extraordinary. This is incredible. And now it's starting to become the main drive, is the inspiration to others and changing people's perspectives on what a disability person can do. Like someone without legs, you might say, can't sail across an ocean, or it's not the first thing you'd think of. But I'm trying to change that perception on what is possible.
How many people have sort of said to you on this particular sort of journey that you've been on, you can't do it? Have you heard the word can't from plenty of people? Has that also been a sort of a driver to push forward?
I think as soon as people actually meet me, they immediately go, oh no, yeah, there's no can't with this man. So they may say it behind my back, but I've not heard anyone say it to my face.
Because it's quite an undertaking. I mean, what does the route look like?
It's quite a simple one, if I'm honest. It goes from La Paz, Mexico, so that's like that long arm of land that comes down Mexico on the Pacific side. So I'll be starting on the inside of that. I'll then go via Hawaii, so basically aiming straight for Hawaii, and then if nothing's gone wrong, if I don't need to stop for any reason, I'll just pass in between Big Island and all the other little islands, get some good photos, and then carry on going, essentially in a nice curve, because you've got to do the Great Circle route. That'll be the best thing to do. And then, yeah, essentially curve down and come back up to Japan. It's just sort of like a big W across the world, which would be cool.
Well, you're making it sound far simpler than it'll obviously be in reality. But when you were mapping out this route, I mean, have you done anything that resembles it previously? Is there anything that you've ever done that prepares you to undertake a challenge like this? Would you say? I mean, you are obviously a keen sailor, but there's being a keen sailor and there's a challenge like this one.
That's true. I have crossed the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean before, and I've traveled a few thousand miles up the Pacific Ocean from Robinson Crusoe Island to Ecuador. Both them trips were over 2,000 miles. And although it is a much, much greater distance, the mileage from Mexico to Hawaii is 2,500. So that's not out of the realms of something I've already done. The Hawaii Japan part is 4,000 miles. That is something I've not done. The other thing that I haven't done is up to 80 days alone. That's the biggest sort of unknown for me. I've done 10 days on my own sailing, and I do enjoy it. I really do enjoy my company, but 60 plus up to 80 is next level. So I'm just trying to prepare for that, keeping my mind engaged and making sure I'm busy and not sort of letting the devil play his mind tricks, sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean that is like you say, like the perception of this trip would be that it's all about a physical challenge and what a challenge that will be, and to overcome that. But then you think about the mental side of it, like you say, that's an awful lot of time, isn't it, with your own thoughts at sea, which is already isolating, and possibly with some inclement weather conditions as well. So how do you prepare for that? How do you get yourself in the right mental frame of mind for it?
I suppose just doing it is my way. I know that I can do 10 days and I have zero issues on that. So and I mean 10 days is I've done nothing but sit there, manage the sails, cook my food. I didn't read a book, didn't look at my phone, didn't do anything other than weather downloads. And so that's about as bored as one can get, I suppose. But I'm still enjoying it and it was fine. So I think that preparation's really good. I know that if, say, my phone breaks or I don't have radio or I can't have those um, entertainment platforms, then I can do at least 10 days without going crazy. But I think if you speak to most sailors that have done long passages, they never say it's the physical, it's always the mental that's the problem. And I'll be documenting a daily like log. So if there is any detriment or if there is any like crazy showing up, we'll be able to see it. And then we can say, oh yeah, day 55, that's when I lost my mind. And these things do happen.
Yeah, they do. And you mentioned a minute ago about not letting the devil in, and I can well understand that when you're in your own thoughts at sea, like you say, day 55 or whatever it may be. Have you had that before? You've been on the most extraordinary journey to get here. You must be more aware than most about actually the power of positive thinking and keeping those things at bay.
I actually try and out logic the negative rather than just not
What does
think
that
about
mean?
it. I let it run. So let's say, what's the easiest way? There's a big wave I can see. The what ifs, and instead of being, oh yeah, but I'm not going to see a big wave, so why worry about it? Like, no, what am I going to do if there is a big wave? My dad's a fairly pessimistic man, although I love him to bits. He likes to what if, and he's a bit of a catastrophizer as well. So he's given me that mindset of instead of just ignoring it, it's like, well, that's not going to happen. Stop saying stuff like that. I have to have a rebuttal and argue it back. And well, I'd do this, I'd do that, I'd do that, and that's out logicking the negative train of thought. Now, let's say I'm a parent and I always have the horrific thoughts of, what happens if I come back and something's happened to my kids or anything like that. That's an uncontrollable. I can't control that. So I have to say to myself, I can't control that. If that happens, yes, it's terrible. And I'll try and get back as fast as possible. but I can't do anything if I'm away. So instead of letting it be a worry and instead of letting it run away, I I see it face on, and I try to attack it to the point where it's then not a worry, if that makes any sense.
Oh, that's yeah, it does. It does make plenty of sense. I mean, I mean, we'll talk about the fact that you've got this young family at home as well, and you got to somehow overcome the fact that you're sort of leaving them to go and do this challenge as well, because that obviously brings its own sort of issues with it. But in terms of how you got here, I mean, if you go way back, can you imagine that this would ever have been something that you would have taken on, or were you always the type of person? I mean, you joined the army as a youngster, sort of 17 years old, I think it was, wasn't it? So can you ever have imagined that you would be taking on a challenge like this with or without a disability attached to this situation? I mean, is it something that you would have done?
I don't know. I tend not to think about what I would have and what I could have. So I've got no idea. I've never thought about it. Although I have always been adventurous, hence why I joined the infantry. I liked that lifestyle. I liked going around the world. So that was the easiest way for me to do it because I wouldn't have been able to afford it otherwise. So why not get paid to, sort of not travel but get sent around the world? Uh, but if I was to look back, if I could meet my 17-year-old self after joining, I I'm pretty sure that he'd be going, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
It definitely is that. So back way back when was it? Sort of July, what was it, 2009 or something along those lines, and
July
you were just
30th,
about, I
yeah,
think you'd just turned
2009.
18, hadn't you? July,
I
yeah,
was 18 in April.
2009,
Yeah.
and you were 18 in the April, and then what was it? A few days or so later, you were caught up in this bomb blast, which effectively changed the course of everything moving forward. What do you remember of that period of time? What can you recall?
On the day, not much really. But yeah, so I was sent to Afghanistan 3 days after my 18th birthday in April, and then I was injured July 30th, 2009. So it's coming up to the 15-year point. But on that day, we were on a routine foot patrol, and we were on a dirt path, and we stopped to take water. So we just kneel down, have a sip of water, rest for 5 minutes, and then as we stepped up again to start our patrol, I was in the middle of the pack of 8, so I was like number 4. And as I remember seeing a white flash hitting the ground, like heavily hitting the ground, and then the guy in front of me running towards me, screaming my name. And although I was conscious, I can't remember anything. I took a massive hit to the face, and it essentially ripped my mouth and my nose off. And then I woke up 2 weeks later in
God.
hospital in Selly in Birmingham.
So you were put into a medically induced coma, were you, at that time?
Yeah, I spent 14 days in a drug-induced coma, yeah.
Wow. And then when you came out of that, what were your sort of learnings about the situation that you were in and what had happened, and presumably your loved ones were around you? I mean, what was all that like?
Otherworldly, if I'm honest. I couldn't really tell if I was dreaming or if I was like, I don't, it's hard to explain. So I had these horrific dreams that the Hulk was ripping my limbs apart. And to me, that felt totally real. Like, I genuinely felt like the Hulk had ripped my limbs off. So my head knew, my brain knew that I'd lost my limbs. When I woke up,
Mm.
because he's still on lots of medication, I had my family around the bed,
Yeah.
all crying their eyes out. And, it's not very nice to see your parents sobbing. Uh, and then you're sort of in and out, and you're trying to grasp it. And it's just like, what has happened to me in your head? You're like, this is really bad. But then you sort of get a bit more compos mentis and you're a bit more aware, and then the doctors come and tell you, look, these are all your injuries. And that's when it's like the sort of, oh no, this is real. Like, oh wow, I'm in a bed, I can't move. For example, I had my arm pinned with a not a cast, but like a foam holder for my whole arm on both sides. I couldn't move my arms. Obviously, couldn't move my legs. I couldn't speak because I had the tracheostomy, and so that stops your voice
Oh yeah.
from being of any use. So I couldn't communicate at all. And then I'm seeing all my parents cry, and then the doctor comes and tells me, you're missing both your legs above the knee, you've lost your left hand, you've got terrible facial injuries. And he's like, this is a lot. And then they sort of go on, and the long list of injuries. But it was that like, oh wow, a doctor's telling me this. This is actually happening. This is bad. And from there, I started like to have a bit of a cry, and not a bit of a cry, a big cry. And my
Yeah.
mum sort of knocked me out of it in a way, because she saw me crying, and my mum, bless her, she's a legend. She went off and came back a few hours later, and I was still crying. And then she's just like, so what are you going to do now? You're just going to lay there crying all day? And I couldn't speak, so I had no way to defend it. But again, she absolutely outlogicked it, and I could lay there crying, and I'd be totally within my right to do so. But it was sort of like, yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm not just going to lay there and cry because, I'm 18. I've got a long life of crying ahead of me if I'm going to do that. So, yeah, all right, let's try and figure out this new life as a triple amputee, and maybe I can be the best one out there, like in terms of doing stuff, inspiring people. And so, yeah, it's sort of that was like the biggest, hardest lesson. While in intensive care, a few days post waking up from a drug-induced coma, and my mum, just gave me a bit of a talking to.
See, that's why mums are brilliant, isn't it? When called on in that moment where you need it to be straightforward and direct, they are absolutely that. And the fact that your dad, like you say, has sort of always been a bit pessimistic, you've obviously inherited from your mum this ability to say, actually, I'm going to knock myself out of this and just get on with what it is that, the hands in which I've been dealt. So I love the fact that she said, after the crying, what are you going to go and do? And so that's a long road to recovery, isn't it? So this has been a long process. It's not like, and tomorrow I'm now going to sail the Pacific Ocean. So what has that between period been like, and how long a journey has it been? And have you had to sort of learn patience in a way that you never thought you'd have to, and things like that along this particular journey?
Yeah, I think I don't have good patience. I changed that wording to this is a new challenge. So although I'll happily sit down and wait for something, I have patience. But when I'm doing a specific task, I don't. So I have to change the way that I look at it, because I will not just carry on trying to do it if I know I can't. But if I go, I wonder if I can do that. I don't think I've ever tried that before. Or how difficult is it going to be? I reword it in my head so it becomes a little challenge that I have to sort of win or overcome, I suppose. And then I'm like just happy with it, because I'm not just like, oh no, I have to do this, or I can't do this, because there's no reason behind it. But when I give that reason of it's a challenge, then that becomes great, specifically for the patience thing. But the road to where I am now, yeah, as you say, it is a long one. I started walking about 7 months after my initial injury, but then I was in and out of hospital for the next 4 years. I left the military in 2014 in January, and the last surgery I had was in 2013 in November. And that was the absolute last surgery I've ever had. So, like 4 years after, I'm still having surgery, sort of thing. But by then I was walking full time, and I was actually professional sailor for Paralympics GB as well. So fortunately, my dad, although he is a pessimistic person, he's absolutely on my side. And when the doctors were like, "You're probably not going to be able to windsurf again," he would absolutely not have that. No, no, not a thing. Like he's
Good for
doing it.
him.
It's a Paralympic sport. Because he knew that as a fact, he could argue it, but if he didn't, then he may have been like,
Mm.
"Oh, well, yeah." So anyway, he went off and got me the Paralympic development coach his email address, and he gave it to me whilst I was in hospital, and I spent one cold Weymouth day in the front of a rib, a speedboat, essentially, in my wheelchair, and we were like, "Oh, do you think you want to try this sailing malarkey?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds amazing." I'd already served my country as a soldier, and it made a lot of sense to then do that transformation into sport, and it really aids in recovery as well. So I did that, and 2012 I became, I think I was on the C rating thing. So I was professional, but I wasn't like as good as what Ben was, obviously. Um, yeah, and then we started from there, started sailing full time. And then in 2015, we found out that the Paralympics in 2020 for Japan were like discontinued for sailing. It wasn't going to be included, and that was what we were aiming for. So it's sort of like, we're like, "Oh, so what am I going to do now?" And a guy invited me out on his ferro cement 50-foot yacht in Melbourne, where the World Championships were, and I was like, "Oh man, this is what I'm going to do. This is great." Uh, that was November. I bought a boat in April, and then I was learning how to do all the navigation and parking the boat and stuff that summer, and I set off 2017. I've been sailing around the world ever since. So the last 7 years, I've been building up my skill set, sailing around each coastline of the world, and yeah, hopefully I'm getting to the point where I'm becoming a reasonably good sailor. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you talk about the Paralympics as well, and then also what you're now about to do. And clearly, sport has given you sort of it's been a great help, a great sort of salvation during this time to sort of get you where you want to be. And has it sort of had a healing effect on you, do you think? Just from obviously there are physical challenges to overcome, but does it feel like it's given you something, a real purpose as well, and a real focus, but also when you're out on those waves, it must feel so freeing.
Yeah, I think there's two elements to it. So the racing side, I wanted to become a world champion. I wanted to say I'm the best at something in the world. That was the drive for that. But then
Mm.
when that got taken away from us, it was sort of like, well, right, okay, not really my fault, but do I really want to pursue that goal? And I didn't really want to. I didn't want that to be my only purpose, sort of thing. But the racing side of the sailing opened up the door to the level of able-bodied and disabled, because we'd have open world championships and we were racing against able-bodied, and it's like, like we actually compete. It's not a walk in the park for them.
Yeah.
They're actually like competing against us. So that was amazing, and that sort of opened my eyes to you know what, like on sailing, I'm actually level footing here. I'm as good as an able-bodied person. And so when that then crossed over into the cruising side of it, that was a much easier thing to do. And the cruising side then gave me that healing element. I'm on a boat and I can just watch the waves all day. I really can. And my perfect sailing is, it's dark, there's a full moon, so it's not really dark. There's algae bloom off the back of the boat, and you just hear the from the dolphins next to you, and you're like, "Oh my God, how does it get better than this?" Like, I'm literally living a lot of people's dreams. And so that healing of just being one with nature, or closer to nature, and using nature to get me to the next destination I want to go is, yeah, it's phenomenal.
Okay, but that's like a perfect scenario where the weather's behaving itself and not misbehaving. And like you say, you're in a wonderful situation there. Have you thought about, because when I speak to Ben about offshore sailing and offshore racing, we talk about the fact you can only really predict the weather for about 10 days, can't you? And then beyond that, you are sort of you are just having to deal with what unfolds in front of you, and Mother Nature can do all sorts of things. So especially around Japan, like we've previously talked about. So how do you sort of prepare for the unpredictable, for the things that you can't? You talk about the controlling the controllables. You can't always control what the weather's going to do. So how do you prepare for that, knowing you've got 80 odd days in front of you?
Yeah, so that is a very valuable thing to understand. The 10-day weather window thing's quite a good one. I don't actually think personally it's 10 days. I think it's more like 5. But yeah,
Yeah.
getting closer to Japan, the weather is a lot more volatile than what it is in the trades. It's just the nature of the beast. But there's if I'm caught out by a storm off of Japan that's built up in 5 days, very much like the hurricane has in the Caribbean right now that built up within a few days.
Yeah.
Then I have a thing called drogue systems. So they're just a bunch of like, for lack of a better term, buckets off the back of the boat. They're obviously a lot stronger than buckets, but it's webbing in cones. So there's a series of them. It's called a Jordan series drogue, and you can trail that off the back of the boat, which means that your stern's to the waves. You'll just be riding sort of really slowly down the waves. That means that I'm not going to flip the boat, because
Mm.
unlike the Sail GP guys, they can right their boats. If I flip mine in the middle of the ocean, I'm done. So I have to take that as a major priority. That's a stern device, and then off the bow I can launch a sea anchor, which is essentially a huge parachute that's made for exactly that, anchoring boats out at sea in storms, and that'll put the bow into the waves. So I just really have to choose which point of sail I'm already on and which is going to be the easiest thing to deploy, and then get all the grab bag ready, make sure things are easy to be deployed if the worst does happen. But having those hurricane specific items will already put me ahead of like, oh well, there's a hurricane coming, right, let's get these out, let's get these ready. But it's not just having them, it's having used them before, so I'm going to have to use them before I set off,
Yeah.
just to make sure that if once deployed, can I actually retrieve it? If not, I'm going to need 2 or 3 of them. So it needs work doing on it. So yeah, it's an amazing question, and the answer is essentially, yeah, the drogue, the series drogues, and the sea anchor as well. You can also have storm sails and stuff like that. But I think when you're past a certain amount of wind speed, you're just in survival mode.
Craig, I wonder, does anything scare you anymore when you've gone through what you've gone through, and it obviously nightmarish scenarios, along that journey for sure. Does anything scare you anymore? Do you just feel like, actually, I'm just going to take all of this on because I've been through some really serious shit, and actually, I feel like I can embrace everything and anything. I mean, does it make you feel almost invincible?
No, not at all. As I say, I think about the what ifs quite a lot, and so there's some which do scare me. Uh, for example, when my partner said she wanted to give birth on the boat, and I was like, I've got no skill set at giving birth to anybody, never mind on a boat. Like in a hospital, I can be of use of watching. That's about it. I can pass maybe my hand over
Yeah.
for you to squeeze, but my partner was adamant we're having the baby on the boat. Okay, we need a midwife because at least then I've got some help. And then it ended up being, I was like, what happens if something goes wrong? So I was researching how to do a cesarean C cut. Like, this is where my mind goes. So I
Oh
was
my
looking on how many
goodness.
layers I have to cut down. There's like, yeah, how much I have to open it
Oh,
and all that. I went really into it. Um, so that's like where my mind goes. That's a scary one for me. Like, so that the worst case there would have been I've lost both my wife, like partner and child. But while I'm sailing, the one that scares me the most, and a lot of people think it's silly, but if I get appendicitis, like I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should get my appendix removed before going. But if I get appendicitis while I'm out there, I'm dead. Like, it's that simple. Or it's going to be the best story in the world where I have to cut my own appendix out, which I don't think is possible.
Oh, oh,
Yeah.
you just, like you say, you sort of don't think, you don't necessarily, your head doesn't go there until you suddenly think, actually, the what ifs. And then that crops up. And I bet, how many times have you thought about an appendicitis issue? Probably like once or twice when you were much younger or something. But it's not something that would occur to you, is it? Unless you're about to do a challenge like this.
And the only reason I started thinking about it was because I was listening to a book by this French guy who sailed around the Americas with a chicken. And he got appendicitis. Like, he nearly died. So it's like, all right, well, it happens. Okay. What do I do now? Do I get it cut out or what? Then the other thing is like, so that's an uncontrollable. I can't control if I get appendicitis or not, but I probably can control it if I get it taken out. So that's a thing I have to consider. And then the other thing is submersible objects. Like if a storm's hit and I'm on the tail end of it, or it's totally missed me by a few 100 miles, but a ship was in it and a container's fallen off, that could probably pierce my boat and sink it, or do some damage at least. And that's, I'm not going to be able to see that. That's just one of those things that I just have to be content with and say, hopefully it doesn't happen. But if I see it in the daytime, obviously I can avoid it.
How much have you had to adapt? How much have you had to adapt your boat, Craig? How much have you had to adapt it for this?
None really. I've got handholds everywhere you'd normally have them, and yeah, it's just making sure that everything runs back to the cockpit, or the running lines come back to a place that's quite accessible for me. But any sailor, I think, should do that anyway, because you don't want to be going up to the bow in waves while you're at sea. It makes no sense when you can just add a few rollers and then a few clutches and put it right in front of you. So yeah, it's actually quite a minimal amount of adaptations on every boat that I've ever had. I've had 3, and none of them have really needed it.
Just finally, I want to ask you, we talk a lot about the what ifs, and that's often laced with the worries and the fears surrounding this adventure. But what are you most looking forward to about it? What's the thing that you're most excited about concerning it?
It's 2 points. It's the setting off. So like, oh, I'm doing it, and then it'll be the arriving, so I can see my family and kids again.
Yeah, that'll be magic. How do they all feel about you going off and doing this?
Well, my son is 3, my daughter's 1.5. They'll be 2 and coming up to 4 when I do it. So they're very young. They're happy with anything. Although they do miss me while I'm away, and they notice the lack of presence. But when I'm with them, I'm usually with them a long time. So we don't have the traditional 9 to 5, I go to work sort of job. But when I'm away for a lot longer. And my partner, unfortunately now, since being pregnant, she gets seasick, which is a wild phenomenon.
No.
She never got seasick, and as soon as she got pregnant, she started getting seasick. It's crazy. So when I said it, she was like, "Oh yeah, cool. I'll go to Switzerland. I'll be with my family. You go there, and I'll meet you there." Like, yeah. Oh wow. Yeah, cool. Thanks. So that was incredible.
She's doing anything she can to get off the water. Perfect. Oh well, look, we wish you all the very best of luck. It's such an amazing challenge, and nobody deserves to make it round and successfully than you. So thank you so much for speaking to us. I really appreciate it, and best of luck with everything.
Yeah, thank you so much too, Georgie. It's really good.
Join us for the Performance People podcast every week for the highs, lows, lessons and stories from people like this lot. Michael Johnson.
Some days what I would see is a person who is a shell of what I used to be.
Eddie Hearn.
We don't operate in a business that's
dangerous, but we just operate in one where you've got to sleep with one eye open.
Mo Farah.
It couldn't get any harder than what I've gone through, and at that point, I just kind of just went for it.
Paula Radcliffe.
You can only control yourself.
Susie Wolf.
And Toto did once liken me to a donkey.
Every Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts.